that work. Perfect. So we have quite a full but very interesting program this afternoon. I will be starting with a very brief introduction about DANS. And then we'll have Ammar Ammar as our speaker from the Maastricht University. He conducted an evaluation of several FAIR tools based on criteria specially designed for this study, and he will give a presentation on this, and there will be time for questions afterwards. After Ammar's presentation, my colleagues Maaike and Linas will give a brief introduction on the FAIR Aware tool, and after that you will have the chance to explore this tool yourself, and then we'll come back and gather your feedback and initiate a discussion on the FAIR Aware tool. And finally, there will be a few words of wrap up by me. Okay, so let me first start with a bit of an introduction. Maybe most of you are familiar with DANS, but I just wanted to share a few insights if you're not that familiar with our institute. So we were building on previous repositories such as the Steinmetz archive. DANS was founded in 2005. It's an institute of the Royal Academy of Arts and Sciences, the KNAW, as well as the National Science Council, the NWO. And our main mission is to promote and provide permanent access to digital research resources. And as such, DANS is the National Center of Expertise and Repository. We have, I checked this morning, almost 190,000 data sets, and with a staff of around 60 people, I think we can safely say that DANS is one of the major repositories in Europe. This year, we started implementing our next 5-year program, which is already the 4th program that we have. And it's based on 3 pillars. It's very much based on the question what the Dutch landscape needs at this moment and how DANS can contribute to this national landscape. And we formulated these 3 pillars. So first of all, we aim to be a center of expertise. We offer a versatile repository, and we're an active collaborator in all things data management related. I'll briefly address each of these pillars. So one of the pillars is to expand and renew our services as a national center of expertise. We do this with a team of research data management experts, a team of around 20 people. They gain extensive knowledge in all kinds of European projects, international projects, but obviously also on a national level. But our main aim is to focus on knowledge transfer from these international projects also to the national level, to the level of data stewards and researchers. I know that many of you work in such a role, such as a research supporting role. In addition, we also created a business intelligence unit. This unit supports our work. It collects information on the market, on trends, etc. And this, in this sense, it keeps us also closely related with current developments so that we can again transfer that knowledge to other parties that are interested. With respect to our repository, we are currently undergoing a major change in the organization. Our easy repository that you may be familiar with was a generic repository, but obviously we realized that research practices, as well as data sets, requirements, etc., are very domain specific. So that's why we now aim to offer a more domain specific, domain oriented solution. It's all built on Dataverse, and we have 4 domain specific data stations. So we have 1 data station for archaeology, we have 1 data station for social sciences and humanities, we have a data station for life and medical sciences, and a data station on nature and technical sciences. Those are the ones that you can see on the screen in blue. And each data station has 1 or more data station managers that are the primary contact points and maintain and establish contact with the specific communities. In addition, we keep offering Data Personnel. Data Personnel is a platform service for research institutions, universities, etc., that establish their own repositories on the Data Personnel platform. And finally, we have the Data Support Station, which is a secure and reliable certified long-term preservation repository. The clicks that you hear, I keep hitting the wrong button. So we're also an active collaborator in various bodies, organizations, projects, etc. If you're from the Netherlands and working in a Dutch institution, then you probably recognize most of the logos on the screen. So on the right, you see, on the left, you see the main national service providers, such as DANS, but also SURF and eScience Center, with which we collaborate a lot. And on the right, you see some of the main domain-specific service providers, such as Odyssey, Claria, DTL, and 4TU. Of course, there's also several bodies that are coordinating, collaborating along all of the lines, and we actively collaborate with them as well. So now turning to today's collaborative effort, we're very happy to have Ammar Ammar here from University of Utrecht, and he conducted his study in collaboration with the RIPM. And also my colleagues Mike and Linas will take up part of the event today. That's all for my introduction. I will stop sharing my screen, Ammar, and you can get ready to share yours.
Okay.
So as I said, Ammar Ammar is working at the University of Maastricht. He's a PhD candidate there. He has a background in computer science and systems biology, and he will be presenting on a paper that's still in progress, almost ready to be published. And it's an evaluation of 10 fair assessment tools, and his evaluation provides insights on the use for both users and developers of fair assessment tools. So please, Ammar, go ahead.
Thank you, Femi, for the nice introduction. So as Femi said, my name is Ammar Ammar, and I am a PhD candidate at the Department of Bioinformatics at Maastricht University. Today, I will be giving this lecture or this presentation named Fair Data Assessment Tools and Evaluation as part of the DANS Data Trade Workshop. So as a start, as you may all know, the FAIR principles are a set of guidelines that has been developed to allow to make the data more findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. And these FAIR principles are really important in the scientific research in general, because research outputs should be organized so they can be more easily accessed, understood, exchanged, and reused. And it's known that making the data usable is important, and it helps increase the time efficiency and the productivity of the researchers in all aspects of research. But however, data reusability remains difficult, and that's due to the lack of infrastructures, also infrastructure, and also all kind of rules that maintain on how to maintain data reusability and how to keep the data in accessible and findable way for others to reuse the data. And if we looked more closely to the research published, we see that most of the research is focused on the findable and accessible aspects, which is putting your data online and make it accessible for the users through the web and so on. But we have much less research focusing on the interoperability and the reusability aspects. And from here, it is important to realize to realize that we need tools to assess the data, the fairness level of the data, and to help the researchers make their data more fair. And especially in the life sciences domain, there is no measurable way of assessing how much the data is fair. And moreover, the use of tools assessing the data fairness helps the future improvement of data and therefore its reuse. In this work that I will be talking about, we conducted a review on the available fair assessment tools that we could find. So this was the main aim of this work. Those fair assessment tools mainly assess a resource, a digital resource, or a data sets for all the four principles of fair: findable, accessible, interoperable, and usable, and also to the sub-principles under each one of those fair aspects. And the main aim of this work, besides reviewing those tools, is to highlight the gap between the data science perspective that is focused on the FAIR principles themselves and the tools from programming point of view, and between the people who generate this data in the life sciences domain and more specifically in the nanosafety domain, which they are focusing on the reporting and conclusion of this data. So we have two communities, one of them from the data science aspect. They are focusing on providing these tools and developing these standards. And the other side, we have the life sciences domain where people want to embrace these technologies and use them in an efficient way to make their data more findable and reusable. And through the analysis of these tools, we will highlight which one of them or how do they provide their services, and which one of them will be more easier to use for users and for developers who want to extend them. So the method of executing this work is composed of 4 phases. The first one of them is about finding the FAIR tools. So we conducted search on the internet to find these tools and group them into 4 groups, as you will see in the following slide. The second step is to set up an evaluation criteria. So after we have this group of tools, we want to make it clear how do we want to evaluate each one of them, and which levels or which aspects we want to consider in this evaluation. The third part of the methodology was to choose 2 use cases, 2 different types of data sets, and also to give those data sets to 3 independent experts who have a background in the life sciences in general, but also have a knowledge on the FAIR principles and how to implement them. And each one of those experts will assess the selected FAIR tools against those 2 data sets, and in the 4th step of the methodology, the observations will be merged and conclusions will come out from the whole assessment or the whole evaluation. So we found several tools online that is aiming to assess the fairness of a data set or a digital resource, and we group them into 4 groups. So we see on the left, those are the online and self-assessment surveys, and this usually this kind of tools are web-based tools where the user can access that through the tool through URL, and the assessment is mainly manually conducted. So you have a questionnaire or a survey where you fill the questions, either yes/no questions or multiple choice questions. And you manually make the relation between the meaning of the question and your own data set or the data resource. So here it doesn't matter if your data is online or offline, if it's a file or database, you can always assess any kind of data set using this kind of tools. And we identified four of them: the FAIRshake, the ARDC FAIR self-assessment questionnaire, the FAIRdat survey, and the certified self-assessment tool. The second group are semi-automated and automated tools, and those tools usually takes an input, either a URL for your dataset or different or any kind of identifier like a DOI or a global unique identifier, and they can perform the evaluation against a specific set of the FAIR principles in automated way. Those are, and we identified two data sets. The first one is the fair evaluator software, and the second one is a semi-automated fair assessment workflow. Both of them are automated and semi-automated tools. The third group of the tools are offline self-assessment surveys, and those are published as a document like a PDF where you can print it or download it and use it offline without the need to the web. And they are similar to the first group. So you have a set of questions, multiple choice, yes or no, or where you can read the question and then apply those questions to your own data set or database. So also it doesn't matter what kind of data source you have, you can always use those tools offline to assess your data sets. We also found a tool called the Datasets Stewardship Wizard, and this one I will talk about this later in the upcoming slides. It has a special characteristics, so we didn't include it in any one of the three groups, and it's included in a group itself called Other Tools. After we selected the tools and we grouped them into 4 groups, now we set up an evaluation criteria. So how do we want to evaluate each tool of those? And we provided 3 groups of characterization criteria. The first one is the prerequisites. So what kind of expertise is required to use the tool? And is the tool provide a guidance like a manual or online course for the users to use it? The second group of criteria is the usage of the tool. So the ease of use, is the tool clear, readable, and intuitive for the user to use? What kind of input is required to the tool? For example, as we've seen before, like some of them are surveys that require you answering the questions, and some of them requires just providing the URL of your resource. The third thing under the usability is the applicability. So are these tools are widely applicable, or they need special form of the data to deal with? And the time investment, the last one in the usability, how much time is needed to assess or to use the tool? The third group of characterization criteria is the output. Which kind of output the tool provides? Are the results clear and easy to understand? How much the level of detail that these tools provides? And does the tool provide an improvement tips or guidelines on how to make the data more fair? So after we set those criteria, we selected 2 data sets. One of them also we deliberately made the data sets and formats different to make sure that the tools to more objectively assess how the tools can deal with different data formats. So the first one was a supplementary material of a journal article, this is a very common way of exchanging data and providing data along with the publication. So it was an Excel file. And the second data set was data set record in the NanoRec2 database, which is database that store experiment information about nanomaterials. And this is accessible through a website and an API. So it can be used it can be analyzed and assessed in an automated way. After that, the 3 experts assessed all the tools that we selected for both of those data sets, and we aggregated the results of evaluation, as we will see in a bit. So the first group that we evaluated are the online surveys. And we also have multiple, every one of the aspects, as you saw in the characterization criteria, we assessed the tools against them. Here I grouped those results, and I selected a couple of the aspects that I thought are more important to report in this presentation, which are the ease of use and time investment. Those are similar and goes hand in hand most of the time. The applicability of the tool, which is important for the audience of this workshop to know which tool is suitable for their data, depending on how do you store your data or how do you publish it. And the third aspect is the type of output. Sometimes you have specific requirements and how do you want to see the report of the assessment. So also I will show here what kind of output every tool provides. And the last one, which is an important aspect for reusability, which is the improvement suggestions, to show if the tool provide any tips or further guidelines on how to make your data more fair. So for the online surveys, we start with the FairDat tool. This is a survey-based tool. It's available online through a website called SurveyMonkey, and SurveyMonkey is a website where people can create surveys and publish them with a URL so people can use them. So this tool is implemented in this way, and thus it's easy to use. You can just enter the URL and start answering the questionnaire. So the ease of use, if it's a plus, then it's more easy to use, and if it's minus, then it's less easy to use. The time of investment also have two values, low or high. So if it's low, it's you can get up to speed with the to use the tool in a short time, and if it's high, it needs more longer time investment. So the FairDat tool was easy to use and required low time investments. Since it's a questionnaire-based tool, that means there is no limit on the applicability, and you can use it to assess any resource, since there is no direct link between the resource or the dataset and the tool. So it has no limits. The type of output, this tool gives you a 5-star rating for each one of the FAIR principles. So you have like 1 out of 5, 2 out of 5, and so on for each of the FAIR F, A, I, and R. And it doesn't provide improvement suggestions. The second tool, the ARDC, FAIR Self-Assessment, also it's a questionnaire-based tool. It has also easy to use, and it requires low time investment. Similarly, it has no clear limits on the applicability. It provides the output as a progress bar for each one of the FAIR principles, and it doesn't have improvement suggestions. The third tool, the Certified, it's a FAIR self-assessment tool developed by DANS, and it aims to help the users to make their data more fair. It's also easy to use and requires low time investments, has no clear limits for the applicability. It gives the output as a percentage score between 0 and 100 for each one of the FAIR principles, and it provides an improvement suggestions for every aspect. So for people who want to use the tool to make the data more fair, the Certified fulfill this criteria. The last one in the online surveys is the FairShake. The FairShake is an open source tool where users can select different FAIR metrics grouped together under units called rubrics, and you can then apply it on your data. This tool requires more in-depth knowledge of how it's structured, and you read and it requires more time for investment, so it's not easy to use as the previous ones, and the applicability of it is limited based on the linked repositories. So whatever FAIR metrics provided inside the FairShake, you're limited to those principles. Also, the type of output is not very common. They have a grid of colors ranging from red to blue, and when you hover over every one of those small squares, you will see a percentage for the corresponding FAIR metric. Also, this tool does not provide an improvement suggestions. The second group of tools are the semi-automated and automated ones, and here, as we said, we have two of them. The first one is the semi-automated workflow. So this is Jupyter notebook-based approach. A Jupyter notebook is a tool that is where you write code in Python programming language, and it can be executed in an interactive way. So this tool provides several notebooks for several use cases of assessing life sciences and for chemistry and nanomaterial use cases for fairness. Since it's written in a programming language, it's not easy to use. It requires some time to get yourself used to it, and it requires some experience in the Python programming language, and for that it needs more time investment. The input of this tool is an API. So if you have a data set that can be accessed in a programmatical way, then this is the type of the tools for to automate the assessment of the fairness. And the output of it is a balloon chart where for each one of the FAIR principles, it shows you how much the aspect is fair and which tests were conducted in automated way and which are in manual. And also it doesn't provide improvement suggestions. The last one here is the FAIR evaluator software. It's also fully automated, but it only requires the ID or the identifier or your resource, and it will conduct the assessment automatically. So it's easy to use and require low time investment. Since it requires your data to be as a digital object, so it's also limited for published data sets who can be accessed through a URL or a DOI. The type of output, it gives you a green and red labeling for each one of the FAIR principles, and it doesn't provide improvement suggestions. The last group of the tools, I combined here the offline surveys and the others, and we have 3 of them. So the Guardian FAIR Metrics Guide has also it's offline, so it's a survey as in PDF file. It's easy and has low time investment and no limits for applicability, and it gives the output on a scale from 0 to 5, and it doesn't provide improvement suggestions. The RDA simple grids, similarly, also they do not require high time investment, and they have no clear limits. The output of them is as a numerical score, and also they do not provide improvement suggestion. And finally, the data stewardship wizard. This one is mainly developed for developing or for making data management planning for projects. So it should be used before the start of the projects, and it's mainly aimed for projects where many or multiple users will be using it and who will be sharing the data within and outside the project. The applicability, it needs to be used at the start of the project, and as an output, it gives a summary report, and also it doesn't provide improvement suggestions. So this for users, we know that there are many tools, and every one of them is meant to be used in different scenarios. So we made a small decision tree for users to use these tools. So if the tools should be cost low time or effort to use, you can use the FAIR Shake or the semi-automated workflow. If yes, then the tool need to be widely applicable. Then the FAIR evaluator software and the data stewardship wizards does not fulfill this criteria. If the tool should be suggesting improvement, then the certified tool is the choice here, and if not, then the remaining tools can be used. So these are for users. This decision tree is meant to make it easier to make a choice which tools fulfill your needs. Since the slides will be provided after the presentation, after the event, so you can go back and the users can use the slides to look more in depth into the tools and choose what better suits their use case. And for developers, also we have this chart to help you select the tools. For example, if the tool you want the tool to be open source, then you can select the ones with open source license, like the FAIR evaluator software, the semi-automated workflow, and the FAIR Shake. If the tool extensible and can be further developed, also you can select the left ones are the most extensible and the right ones are not. And if the tool is mature and fully developed, then also the left ones are fully developed, and on the right they are still in trial phase. So as we saw there are too many tools to choose from. This assessment didn't mean to say that this tool is bad or true or bad or good, but it's meant to give you a wide overview on what kind of usage, where you can use these tools, and what is the best case, best scenario to apply it on your data. And everyone is free to choose the most suitable tool to apply on their data set, also depending on the time they have for investment, the expertise in your team, and the nature of your data. So I would like to acknowledge my colleagues, the main authors of this work, Nenke Krans, Joris Quick, Martina Becker from RIVM, and Ichon Willihagen and me from Maastricht University. I would also like to acknowledge the RIVM and the nanosafety cluster projects, which I work for, specifically the RISCON and the NanoSolvit projects. Yeah. Thank you for listening, and I'm glad to have your questions.
Thank you very much, Ammar. That was very interesting. Gave a really nice overview. I kept an eye on the chat and I see that there are some questions in there. Ingrid, I see you put in 2 questions. Would you like to pose them yourself?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Yes.
Okay. So yeah, thank you very much for your talk, Ammar. 2 questions popped up in my mind, questions that I also struggle with myself. So the first one is, you looked at a lot of tools, you evaluated them, and I also looked at, you presented the requirements that you, or the criteria that you used.
Yes.
And I was wondering, did you at any stage also look into the world behind the tool? So in a sense, what are what is the basis, what are the requirements, the criteria that were used into defining the scoring within the tool? Because that really is the basis upon which the fairness of a data set is then assessed. And I think that is a very important element that needs to be, the basis of that needs to be very sound and I think preferably also community-based. So that's the first question. And my second question would be, when we think about assessing fairness, there is, of course, a large diversity between different disciplines and even sub-disciplines in what is fair and in how far also fairness can be achieved according to the FAIR principles. I would like to argue that for some data sets, you can never ever reach the 100% fairness. So isn't there also a kind of danger in using these tools? So for example, if funders start to use tools like that to determine whether the data sets that researchers produce are fair enough or not. So is it only good, or do you also see negative sides? What's your opinion on that?
Okay, thank you for your questions. Okay, I will start with the first one. So yeah, we looked at each one of these tools, and specifically for the manual of these tools is the main way of interpreting how did they choose their criteria and how did they score them. So also we found for the same FAIR sub-principle, for the same questions, there are some variance between the tools. So we looked into that, and we also looked in their assessment schema. They're not comparable. There are quite some variation between them, especially between groups like the automated ones and the survey ones. So yes, we went through that, but due to the limitation of the presentation, I cannot present all the details of every tool. They will be described in detail in the paper. And also when we compared our results, the three experts, when we compared our results, the understanding of the user for each one of those tools differ considerably. So one tool could tell you that the preferred formats to publish your data, they have a set of formats. The other one, they do not all of them overlap. So one format could be considered fair for one tool, but not fair for the other. So there are differences between them. But as you said, there is no tool can be there's no tool can achieve total coverage of the FAIR principles. And we know that the FAIR principles in the first place, they were verbally communicated. They were not like technical implementation guidelines, but a verbal description of how the data should be made, or how the data should look like to be reusable. So yeah, we looked into it and we observed these variances, as I told you, and it will be in the paper, of course. For the second one, this is actually also linked to the first question. is there a danger in making the fairness explicit? Most of these tools are meant as a way to enlighten the user and help the researchers into making the data more fair. So it shouldn't be explicitly taken at like if this criteria were not met, then the data it's not fair at all, because there are these variances between the tools, and the aim why the tool was developed in the first place also differs. And as you said, also between disciplines, what makes the data fair is also variable. So here we should only take that as an indicator if the data is already like made effort, the data generators made some effort in making the data fair or not, but not to rely on the numbers. These numbers should not be an explicit way of judging if a data set is fair or not. But they are good indicators if the data has been published in a way to facilitate the reusability of the data. I hope I answered your questions.
Thanks, Ammar. Yes, that was I really like that sort of sensible approach towards the numbers. The numbers is not that, you know, that final and that strict.
Exactly.
There's one other question in the chat. Matthijs, do you want to step forward and pose your question, or shall I read it?
Oh, sure, I can pose the question. Hi, Ammar.
Hi, Matthijs.
I've got a question. So we are working on a fair implementation profile for neurodegenerative diseases. And we're looking at interoperability, federated analysis of the data. So we're looking at fairness to assess fairness, but we're also looking at quality, because if the data is not good, then yeah, the federated analysis or learning becomes very difficult. So I was wondering, have you looked at this data quality assessment as well? And are some of the tools maybe capable of doing something like that as well?
Yeah. Thank you for your question, Matthijs. Here, it's more trickier to assess the quality of the data, and the FAIR principles mainly, it's about guiding the researchers in making the data mostly findable and accessible and reusable, but they do not specify exactly how each type of the data or how each field can assess the quality of the data. And from your question, I see that this is mainly involved under the R1.3 principle, which is about the data and metadata meet domain relevant community standards. So for each one of the communities or domains, they should provide their own standards in a fair way, and then the data can be assessed against those community standards. But in general, the FAIR assessment tools that we analyzed, they are only tackling the general FAIR principles, and they do not have any domain-specific FAIR metrics to assess your resource against. So if you have a clinical data, for example, or chemical data, and in chemical data, you may be, from a quality perspective, you should report, for example, the cell type where you conducted the experiment, the pH of the medium, or the temperature, and so on. So the FAIR data principles do not get involved into the details of every discipline, but under the R1.3, researchers in every field can develop, can provide their standards in a way that can be, in a way where datasets can be assessed against those standards. So those tools, the selection we've made, they're only for the main findability, accessibility, and reusability, and not for specific data quality assessment.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ammar. Thanks, Matthijs, for your question. I see that Liz also has a question. I propose that this is the last one for now. We will have time for feedback and discussion after the Fair Aware introduction and exploration. So there will be more time to discuss later, but Liz, if you want to go ahead now, then please do.
Yeah, thank you. My question goes more into, because I think it's important that you mentioned it. So these will be tools that researchers or support will be assessing their fairness of their data, and I think it's good, but I'm wondering how much can we ask for a researcher, right? So wouldn't it more make what do you think of training? I'm a data steward, for example. So training data stewards to really use or have one tool or have several tools that really do the job well. And we help researchers with that rather than having the researchers having to learn everything themselves. And for example, what you mentioned of like the Jupyter one with Python, that it's not very easy that everyone will gonna learn Python to use it, right? So my point goes into more towards, it might become a little bit more of a niche, but as long as we can have the support, which at the Netherlands universities we do have, I think, that we prepare ourselves to use these things properly and we use them with our researchers rather than having everyone being able to use everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, so your question is, should the researchers learn and use these tools themselves, or we should have a support team that teach them or train them for this, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, indeed. So for actually, I think there is no clear cut here. So some aspects researchers themselves should know how to provide. For example, when you want to use identifiers, it's important for the researchers to know which identifiers in their domain exist. So if you want to use the chemicals, which data sets provide identifiers for chemicals like Kimball and Kibbe and so on. If you're in biology, which identifier for genes and proteins you should use, or if you're not using at all, you should start adopting these things. So from the researchers, there are a minimum level of knowledge knowledge on these FAIR principles and how to include these aspects in their data from the beginning of the project, and also the things related to the hosting of the data, publishing it online, making it available for long term. These things that are covered by different FAIR aspects, those are beyond the capacity and the control of the researchers themselves. And then the support team you're talking about, the data stewardship people, the data management planners, those should take care about those aspects. So we can separate a bit between the FAIR aspects that should be taken care of by the researchers and the aspects that should be taken care of by the organization or the hosting institution.
Yeah, thank you. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ammar.
Sure,
thank you for the questions. I would like to move on now, also in the interest of time. So I invite my colleagues, Maaike Verburg and Linas Czepinskas, to prepare for presentation, and they will be introducing the FAIR Aware tool. They're both research data management experts at DANS. Maaike has a background in psychology and cognitive neuroscience, and Linas has a background in the social sciences and a degree in political science. In the context of the FAIR project, they've been working on the FAIR Aware tool and updating the FAIR Aware tool. So please, Maaike, Linas, go ahead. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Femi. I will first start with a small introduction of the tool, and then later Linas will lead all of you in the discussion where we discuss the connection between FAIR Aware and the evaluation criteria that Ammar Ammar and his colleagues have set up and previously discussed. So as Ammar said previously, there are many FAIR tools, and maybe you're not happy to hear that we have another one, but we are very happy to share it with you. And it's a different tool than the ones Ammar Ammar and his colleagues evaluated so far, which is why we wanted to highlight this connection that we can make here. So as Femi introduced already, Linas and I work in the FAIR project, which is a European project which focuses on fostering FAIR data practices in Europe. And it focuses on many different aspects, as you can see in the image. And I highlighted the specific one that is relevant for us today, which is where we created pilots to support the assessment of FAIR data in trustworthy repositories. DANS is the project leader of FAIR, and together with 22 different partners, we've worked on this project for the past almost 3 years. It's coming to an end in upcoming February. And Linus and I specifically have dedicated the better part of the last year to the development of one of these pilot tools, which is FairAware. This is a small glance at the new version of the tool, which we'll delve into later. FairAware is a very simple and straightforward tool where you can assess your knowledge on the FAIR principles. So it's not focused on assessing data, but it's assessing your knowledge. So you answer 10 very simple FAIR questions and you read the guidance texts that come with it. And through reading these guidance texts, you start developing FAIR knowledge and skills. You can leave feedback on the tool to help us improve it. And then you receive your FAIR assessment scores. And at this point, you have harnessed yourself to create more FAIR data. And all that's left then is to spread the word about your beautiful FAIR data and about how the FairAware tool can help others achieve the same thing. So as I mentioned, there's a separation between tools that are useful before data publication and tools that are useful after data publication. And in the FAIR project, we developed one tool for both situations, and we focus on FairAware today. So FairAware is the tool that you use before you deposit your data in a repository or a database. And it's mostly useful for researchers or data stewards or other support staff. But anyone working with data can benefit from the guidance text in the tool. And the tools that are useful after data publication are about assessing the actual data set. And those are useful for, well, as well as researchers and data support staff, also the data repositories, because they can assess their data holdings and see what they can do to improve the fairness of the data sets as well. So FairAware as a FAIR tool is very simple, therefore very versatile. In its core, it's a learning tool. So it helps you assess your current level of knowledge about FAIR, and it gives you some practical tips on how to take your next step in making more FAIR data. You can also use the tool as a group assessment, which we are going to delve in today for a little bit to showcase that aspect of the tool as well. And you can also use it when you're planning for FAIR. So when you're writing your data management plan, you can use the guidance text in the tool to help you make some decisions. Or when you're choosing which repository to deposit your data in, you can use tools such as re3data to select a repository. But to think of the criteria that you want in a repository to make sure that they take good care of your data, you can use the guidance text in FairAware. We see making FAIR data as a collaboration between both the researchers and the data support staff, as well as the repository, in which each side has their own responsibilities. So knowing which responsibilities are repositories is very important, because then you can know where to best deposit your data to give it the best long-term life after you've deposited it. You get a very interesting scoop today, because we've just updated the FairAware website. So you'll be looking at the new and improved version of FairAware today. We launched it last week, and we've improved all the guidance text based on the feedback that we've collected so far. So we've now made it more easy to use, we hope, and more informative. And you'll have the chance to look at it in a moment. Right now, the current status of the tool, we've had over 350 users, and they have helped us get it to the place where it is today. Our tool is discipline agnostic and user agnostic. Anyone can use it. And as you can see, we have a pretty good split over the different domains, with the life sciences being the second largest user of our tool. And you can see that about 79% of our users agree that FairAware has helped them raise their awareness about the FAIR principles and helped them understand them better. And as Ammar has also mentioned before, the interoperability principle seems to be the most difficult to grasp. And we hope that the Fair Aware tool can help anyone, any user who does the assessment gain a little bit more understanding about what you can do to adhere to that principle a little bit better. Let's see. Yeah. So now it's time for you to explore the tool. We'll post the link to the Fair Aware tool in the chat. And we'd like to ask you to use the course identification code for this event and fill it in where you can see here, I put a screenshot. You can then submit your answers and you have about 15 minutes to do this. After you've submitted your answers, I will then use our new trainer functionality to group together all your results. And then I'll show a couple of graphs about what the tool informs you of when you use it in this sense. So maybe this can be interesting for any trainers or data stewards present who are interested in the tool, and they can see what you can do and what you can learn about the fair awareness of your group of users. While you're looking at the tool, gather some thoughts for the general feedback about the tool, if you have any questions about Fair Aware or your experience with it, and also for the discussion afterwards, where we try to apply the criteria that Ammar used earlier in his table with the 3 main topics, and apply them to our Fair Aware tool. We'll do this via Mentimeter, so you don't have to recall all the questions yourself, but maybe you can think back of some of the criteria already and start applying them to Fair Aware to see how the evaluation of this tool would be. If anything is unclear, please use the chat to communicate to us, and if not, I will give you all the time to start exploring.
Thanks, Micah. I see nobody screaming and yelling, so I think all instructions are clear. So you have 15 minutes now to explore the tool for yourself. I will stop the recording now, so we'll have an open discussion and feedback afterwards.